Hello. This is the Sober Mom Life podcast. No, you did not make a mistake and you're not listening to this podcast by mistake. This is on a Friday. You guys, I've decided to bring back Friday episodes. They're going to be a little bit different. So it's not going to be a full length episode, but I heard the feedback. I did 2 episodes a week, Monday and Friday, for quite a long time. I got a little burnt out and I was writing the book and it was just a lot. But I have gotten feedback since we quit the Friday episodes like, hey, bring back Fridays. Those really helped. Those used to be the Sober Mom Life episodes, the real Sober Mom episodes. And now we kind of sprinkle those through the Monday episodes. And so, all of that to say, the Friday episodes now are going to be these bite-sized episodes called the Weekend Reset. This is just for you to listen to as you're, getting ready Friday morning, or you are getting ready to go to a holiday party, or you're just, Friday rolls around and you're already starting to romanticize that glass of red wine and you're kind of forgetting all of the things that you remembered throughout the week. Maybe you begin Monday with listening to the episode and you are like, yes, I want to do this. I want to quit drinking. I want to keep going. I want to see what life can be without alcohol. And then as you get closer to Friday, maybe you begin to forget or fall into old patterns because how long have you been drinking, right? You've been drinking for probably decades. And change is hard. Change is possible, but change is hard. And so this is designed as just like a little kind of spark at the end of your week. And before you get into the weekend, maybe this episode, these 15-minute, they're pretty short. Maybe you can listen to it as you're cooking dinner Friday night. Or if you don't cook dinner Friday night, because I don't, that's a rule. You guys, cooking dinner Friday night is for the birds. And so it's always like pizza or I order something. And so maybe instead of just kind of mindlessly reaching for that glass of wine, you can take a quick walk. You can pop this episode into your ear. Each episode of the Weekend Reset will be a topic. And so I will really just focus on one kind of idea, one sort of mind shift that we can take into the rest of our weekend and then into how we think about sobriety. I wrote the book, The Sober Shift, to change your entire perspective on alcohol and sobriety. But maybe you don't have, 8 hours to listen to a book. Maybe you just want little bite-sized morsels that you can listen to when you really need them. So that is what this episode is designed to do. I hope that it meets you wherever you are and that you find what you need in here in addition to our regular Monday episodes. So I was thinking today what I wanted to do and what did I want to talk about on this first weekend reset. And, we're coming off of Sober October. If you did Sober October, we can fall into the trap of counting down until we quote unquote can drink again, like drinking is a privilege. But I'm going to challenge something and I'm going to tell you there's something that I say, I write it in every book that I sign. I, write it at the end of every Instagram post. And that is keep going. Keep going. It's 2 words. It's simple. But what does it mean? And why do I say it? First of all, I want to make sure that we understand the difference between keep going and don't stop, right? When you're running, I'm a runner and I think about running a lot. When you're running and you hear, like if I'm at my shred class or something, my workout class, and the instructor says, don't stop, I immediately, my subconscious conjures up like a stop sign or, our subconscious thinks in like pictures. And so then I think I get the signal to stop because that's what my brain is telling me to do. Don't stop is not a good motivator. Okay. Keep going then conjures a green light. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so that's just that's a tip from my mom, the therapist. You know that I don't bring a lot of science to my podcast. That's not going to change. Okay, there is science in the book, in the Sober Shift. I'm not going to become a researcher on here, but that is something that you can, a quick and simple thing, rather than saying don't stop to yourself when you're working out or doing something hard, you're going to say keep going instead. Okay. And so keep going. What does that mean? And why do I say it? I'm going to tell you that it is easier, it is so much easier to keep going when you're doing something hard than it is to begin again. Okay, that doesn't mean that if alcohol, if you invited alcohol in and you kind of forgot everything that you had learned through October and how you had felt, and if it just felt too hard and you invited it in on Halloween or the weekend after, that doesn't mean you can't begin again, right? Beginning again is crucial, and you can learn so much from when alcohol comes back in. But before you get to that point of inviting alcohol in, I want you to remember that it is easier to keep going. Now, does that mean that it's easy? No, it's not easy. Early sobriety, and I don't have a time frame for you because it's different for everybody. I think for me, it probably was, the first 3 months of to the whole year it feels maybe you feel a little bit off balance as you're going through those sober firsts. But definitely those first 3 months are the hardest that sobriety for me was. Okay. And I liken it and I compare it to running. I compare everything to running. And it's just such a great metaphor for life, I think, running. If you are a runner, or even if you're not, everyone had to run the mile in school, right? Remember those like president's challenges or whatever, the blue patches or the red patches or the whatever. We've all had to run a mile. I'm going to tell you, as a runner, I've run a marathon, I've run a handful of half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks. I run, as much as I can every week. The first mile of every single run is the hardest. I generally hate it. My brain is telling me, what are you doing? What the hell? Stop. Like, this is horrible. This is never going to get better. What are you doing? My body feels heavy. My body is like, it's in shock, right? My knees are creaky now that I'm 45. My ankles don't feel good. Like, it's not shooting pain, right? It's not an emergency, but it doesn't feel good. And it's so fucking hard. The first mile. I don't care how many times I run, the first mile is so hard. And if I would have stopped, right? If I would have stopped after the first mile or somewhere before I hit a mile, I would have never discovered my love for running, because running for me does not feel like the first mile. If running felt like the first mile of every run, I wouldn't be a runner. I would never run. I would say, that's misery. It's horrible. I hate it. And I'm never doing it again. And I'm willing to bet if you're a runner or if you ask any runner, they would agree. And they would say, you cannot judge your run by how you feel on the first mile. Your body has to get used to it. Your mind has to catch up to say, like, okay, I guess we're doing this thing. I better get in line, right? You have to get into your rhythm. You have to get the kinks out. You have to learn how you feel that day. You have to settle into this new state of running. Okay. It is exactly the same in sobriety. If sobriety felt like the first 30 days of quitting drinking, the first 2 months, the first 3 months, hell, even the first year. The first year is not going to be horrible. But if sobriety in total, if my sobriety today felt like those first weeks, I would not be sober. I would not have created the Sober Mom Life podcast. I would not have written a book called The Sober Shift to tell you how great it was. I would not have done it. Instead, sobriety, especially those first days, weeks, maybe months, require momentum. They require you to make the decision to keep going. And I say it's a decision because it's not something that you are going to have to wake up and answer every day. Do I want to keep going today? Right? No, you are going to keep going. That carrot is like past the 3 months or the 6 months or whatever marker you set for yourself. You're going to keep going because you're going to remind yourself every day that it is easier to keep going and that this beginning part, this hard part, this part where you're doing something that you've probably never done in your whole entire life. You're, grieving alcohol and what it was. You're learning new tools. You're feeling feelings for probably the first time without drinking them away. You're counting on yourself. That part is hard. Yes, it's rewarding. And yes, it leads to great things and all of that stuff. But that's the first mile. You're in the first mile. And how you get through the first mile is head down, keep going. And yes, along the way, maybe you listen to people who are on mile 2, mile 3, mile 15, mile 26, and you say like, hey, does it get better? Right? Like, just tell me it gets better because I need some reinforcement. I need some hope here. I need to know that it's not always going to feel like this. And those people will say, yes, it gets better. But it requires you to go through this first mile. It breaks my heart to think if you start out really excited, right? I want to quit drinking. It's Monday morning and I feel like shit after drinking all weekend and I know I want to quit drinking. And then when it starts to get hard, you invite alcohol back in, that then you think and you have assumed and probably taught yourself that that's what sobriety feels like, that it feels like a forever wanting and kind of miserable and white knuckling and just holding on. And it is required at first, but that is not what it feels like. I promise you, for me, for hundreds and thousands of other women, that is not what it feels like. What it feels like after you get through that early sobriety part, after you run your first mile, you start to feel free and you begin to feel like you could run forever. Okay? That is what sobriety feels like. That is what you're working toward. But you have to get through the first mile. And in order to do that, it's easier to keep going. You have momentum, right? You're starting to get in the groove, even when it gets tough, even if there's a hill, you keep going because you have the momentum. It is easier to keep going. I want you to think about that as you get through the weekend. If the weekend tends to trip you up, that's okay. Expect that to happen and remind yourself that yes, even on the weekend and even when your brain is convincing you it would be easier to drink, I want you to write it down that it is easier to keep going. Be sure to check in. If you have a community, check in with them. We would love to have you in ours. It's the Sober Mom Life Cafe. There's a free week in the show notes. Check it out. See if you can hop on a meeting. And we have Friday meetings just for this reason. Just please remember it's easier to keep going. Okay, let's meet back here. I'll be back here on Monday, and I will be back here every Friday with these little bite-sized tips that you can use to get through your weekend. Thank you so much for listening to the Weekend Reset on the Sober Mom Life podcast.